Madam Chair, you said, I guess, Madam Chair, the
Yes,
supplemental.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Okay, yes, Madam Chair. I think the supplemental list, she concluded the supplemental list does require a vote. I will say that I've been a strong advocate of the community input, and I realized that the initial round of speakers were requisite before we could take any action. So with that being said, to a greater extent, and the attorney can clarify, I think we've fulfilled the initial obligations that we have under the provisions for speakers. The supplemental list does reflect those speakers that came in after the deadline, so I don't think it has the same obligation. And I know we usually consider this in a public forum, but under these circumstances, I do have some concerns relative to extending this beyond what was initially obligated to relative to those who got it in on time. It is the pleasure of the board, but I am passing the gavel back to you and for us to deliberate over that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. I still, the screen is not, I'm not sure who's on the screen.
I see myself, Dr. Navarro, Mr. Superintendent.
Okay, now we are, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The screen is back. Yes, yes, yes. Let me see, Dr. Fremont is here, Ms. Castillo, Dr. Carp, Mr. Rojas. Yes, we have board members. Yes, we have yes, I believe. Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. You waiting for me, Dr. Gallen? I'm sorry. Oh, you
Yes,
Madam Chair, I'm also here. I was just trying to unmute my.
Thank you, Dr. Perez. Thank you. I missed exactly what you at the end asked the attorney or asked me, sir, or what? I mean.
Yes, I guess the attorney through the chair, he could weigh in on my understanding of it. Pursuant to those speakers that came in within the time frame and the four corners of the timelines, we've satisfied that obligation, and that obligation did have a nexus to our ability to vote. So we have satisfied that as well. So with respect to our inability previously to have a discussion, but not being able to vote prior to exhausting the list, I think we've done that. The supplemental list, however, represents, as each of you knows, those speakers who came in after the time. My thought and my position is I've been an advocate of public input, but I've also been a strong advocate of compliance with our obligations to do things in decency and in order. That list, the supplemental list at this particular time, providing that we're able to carry out the board's business. I don't know what the board's pleasure is, but my inclination is that we move forward with the board's business. And I'm not in support of the supplemental list at this time under the circumstances, but obviously that will come to a vote. I think we have been very exhaustive in satisfying the initial round of those speakers who got their requests in on time. And currently we are able to now have a discussion on the item and a vote. We've satisfied those four corners of the law, policy, and statute relative to those requirements. Mr. Attorney, can you opine on that or my interpretation and articulation of that, sir? Through the chair.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes, through the chair. Yes, Dr. Gallen is correct with regard to the obligation of the board to take in the speaker's comments. That obligation has been met. There were also rules that were published prior to the meeting that required the speakers to submit their comments both through voicemail or through email prior to the deadline. And for those speakers that submitted comments after the deadline, for those comments to be heard, that actually requires a motion. If there's no motion, then those speakers can't be heard. Again, the tradition has been, I believe all those comments that were submitted after the deadline were in writing, were in a written form. So that may also help inform the board in terms of what it may want to do. It also would require Desiree to read them if the board so chose to move in that direction. But I just want to make it very clear that at this point, The board has met its statutory obligation under 286.0114, as well as a policy 0169.1, that it has permitted those speakers who signed up to speak on time to provide their comments prior to the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Thank you, sir. Are you making a motion, Mr. Dr. Gao?
No, ma'am. Through the chair, the attorney said if there is no motion, we proceed with the presentation of the item. I don't plan on making a motion to request that they speak, and I'm not in support of a motion to speak as well. I'm not in support of it, and I'm not making it.
Okay, well,
Through the chair.
nobody
So
wants to make a motion.
If there's no motion, we proceed.
I cannot make a motion, otherwise I would make it because I'm chairing the meeting.
I say, hearing no motion, Madam Chair, I'm prepared to present the item that's on the floor.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I would make the motion because I think this is the first time, this is one of the worst meetings, in all due respect, I've ever witnessed at the school district. I would make a motion, but because I have always voted to hear the supplemental, and we have always in the 22 years. However, given the situation, as Mr. Harvey said, we can get these written comments and read them, because I think we owe it to our teachers and parents and students to get on with the business, which is what I have been trying to do all evening long. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So are you making a motion, Dr. Barrett?
No, ma'am.
Okay. No.
Regrettably not.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If there's no motion, I'm prepared under your direction to proceed with the item.
Madam Chair,
Hellman, yes, sir.
I will make a motion that we instruct Desiree, our person, our board record keeper, to provide us with copies of those supplementals and period.
Seconded.
It's been moved and second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Brenda,
yes, Madam Chair, I'm trying to be a participant, but I'm having some great technological difficulties. So I won't see you all and you won't see me. I'm going to do all that I can for through audio. I'm on my cell phone. Computer just went out. So I'll do my best to participate.
very good. Thank you. I know you've had a lot of technological problems, Dr. Mendoza, but we appreciate very much that you are even on your phone, but that you're up and about. We're voting, ma'am. I don't know if you heard the motion.
I did, and I voted for. I said I voted for it, but you didn't hear me.
Oh, yeah.
You still there?
Yes, I'm here, ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So what was the vote? Because I'm not sure. Dr. Feldman,
Ma'am, I believe it was unanimous to provide all of us with copies of the supplemental. I did not hear anyone say nay when you asked the question.
thank you very much.
Right. Okay.
Thank you very much for making the motion, Dr. Feldman. Thank you. Dr. Gallo, this is your item 813.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would say good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your consideration and approval of my request sent to you this past weekend to move my agenda items up for the beginning of the meeting. As Dr. Feldman mentioned in committee last week, agenda item H13 has encapsulated many, if not all, of the elements and issues that have caused serious concerns among employees, teachers, and parents, continuous disruption to and denial of teaching and learning, and an overall sense of consternation regarding the district in its delivery of its core mission, the education of students. I want to also thank the co-sponsors of this item. You, Madam Chair, Perla Tabares-Hampman, Board Member Maria Teresa Rojas, and Board Member Dr. Larry Feldman. Your willingness and commitment to embrace both the spirit and intent of this item and the related issues surrounding not only the denial and disruption of teaching and learning, but also to a swift, appropriate resolution are truly appreciated. The School Board of Miami-Dade County remains committed to providing all students with a quality education, inclusive of academic support and enrichment opportunities during the current pandemic, which continues to vex the community, state, nation, and world. The board, along with the superintendent, district staff, principals, teachers, employees, and yes, even parents and guardians, have resolved to deliver consistent, continuous, and equitable educational programming to students via distant learning programs and platforms. This has been necessary as a result of the risks associated with face-to-face instruction due to recent positivity rates and related health and safety concerns in Miami-Dade County pertaining to COVID-19. As is widely known, Florida has been significantly impacted in the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases, placing it among the highest in the nation. Further, Miami-Dade County led the state in these numbers. In fact, on Sunday, July 12, 2020, Florida broke U.S. state records with 15,300 cases and saw its second highest daily record the very next day, with Miami-Dade leading with a staggering 67,713 total confirmed cases, with a positivity rate exceeding 28%. This trend decreased the likelihood of brick and mortar school opening at the beginning of the 2020-21 school year, and increased the need and demand for parents to access digital distance learning options for their children. Although we have been encouraged by the recent decline in positivity rates in Miami-Dade County, which have now fallen near 5%, we must remain vigilant and resolute in our commitment and obligation to a safe, smart, and seamless physical opening of our schools. These circumstances also require a more strategic, deliberate, and thoughtful plan of action around training and related support for parents in the use of digital distance learning platforms and technologies. Ultimately, these combined efforts were intended to improve the quality of distance learning experience for parents, teachers, and students, and more importantly, student learning and achievement during these educationally challenging times. Training was reportedly provided to teachers, employees, and parents beginning the week of August 24, 2020. Previously, the school board approved a reopening plan at its special board meeting of July 1st, 2020, consistent with the Executive Order 2020-EO-06 issued by the Commissioner of Education on July 6, 2020, directing that all public schools be open for the 2020-21 school year, beginning this fall. The executive order specified that districts must open brick and mortar schools at least 5 days a week for all students, subject to local health conditions and/or guidance from the Florida Department of Health. School reopening would be preceded by and subject to the approval of a reopening plan submitted by each school district. During this meeting, the school board approved a plan grounded in the following 4 principles. Number 1, ensuring the safety and wellness of students and staff. 2, delivering high quality instruction to students, regardless of delivery model. 3, providing parents with flexibility and choice in instructional delivery models. And 4, optimizing the use of resources. More importantly, MDCPS provided parents, via its reopening plan, a schoolhouse model, digital model, and hybrid model, which reflected a combination of schoolhouse and digital. However, at the special school board meeting of July 29, 2020, which was scheduled to provide an update to the district school reopening, the schoolhouse model and hybrid model were no longer presented as options for parents to choose. The digital model was presented as the sole option that will be made available to parents, along with a new digital platform, K12, which would be used as the district's single online platform for teachers, students, and families. The school board was not presented an item to approve the selection and purchase of K12. There was no public vetting or means to receive deep, diverse, and wide voices from teachers, and seeming gaps that would be expected to be noted by staff were not corrected and or noted. In fact, it was confirmed at the school board committee meeting of September 2nd, 2020, that the purchase of K12 program was through a no bid contractual award and at a cost of $15.3 million, which was allowable via current school board policy, and though not required to be used by the district, was one of 2 programs approved by the state. It was also announced that the contractual agreement had not been fully executed, despite the fact that services such as professional development and training, course uploads, and platform access had been provided to the district. Challenges and issues were reported with the initial launch of training and professional development of K12, beginning August 24th, 2020. Concerns and issues were voiced by teachers as well as parents who were also registered to begin online training during the same period. Concerns range from the effectiveness and delivery methods and content of the training to the compressed time to learn and prepare to utilize a new critically important digital learning platform in the nation's 4th largest district. Some teachers also expressed concerns that curriculum for their particular subject areas were not available and or offered through the system. These concerns and issues were expressed through Monday, August 31st, 2020, first day of school, at which point a tipping point was realized with the total shutdown of MDCPS's online system, preventing students, parents, and employees from accessing the district and related student learning platforms. Many of these issues regarding accessibility, reliability, and utility, as well as related rigor and resources, continue to linger and have continued to cause extreme anxiety, consternation, and even doubt in the district's ability to provide a consistent, high-quality distance learning program through K12. Other issues that have come forth were not only regarding connectivity, but curriculum content. Some parents and teachers expressed that some lessons cited workbook and resources that were not provided and or only available through downloading PDF documents, in which some documents exceeded 200 pages. For parents that had no workbooks, no resources to refer to, no printers to print from, the unintended consequences was that their children had no equity, no equal opportunity for learning afforded to them as afforded to other students. This is not the system of public education that we subscribe to or support. This runs counter to the provision of the final frontier of social justice and equal opportunity afforded through public education, and that we promise to all students in Miami-Dade County Public Schools, a promise to give them the world, all of them. I dare not venture into the darkness, the doldrums of inequity that have manifested and expanded across the nation and district, especially in those communities burdened by immense poverty, underservice, under-resourced, immigration, parental absence of capacity, educational apathy, and that which often hides in plain sight, systemic racism. That may appear to be an entirely different narrative, but in this instances, with these concerns, the narrative is the same. It is bad. But in some homes and communities, this is an issue that goes from bad to worse. This situation has exacerbated the teaching and learning experience of educators and students, and a seeming erosion of sectors of the public's confidence in MDCPS as an A-rated, highly regarded district throughout the state and community and throughout latitude in education-related educational purchasing decisions is granted to the administration. None abdicates the role, responsibility, and accountability of the school board for district expenditures and school system operations, and ultimately the educational experiences and outcomes of students. And although the initial decision to seek and contract K12 through a no-bid process, which lacked board approval and public vetting and ultimate board approval, there is a time in which the board must unilaterally and decisively act, and most importantly, lead and lean in on behalf of the district, employees, teachers, parents, constituents, and most important, our students. Such leadership and action are demanded for a time such as this. You see, ever so often, there are times such as this when the board's role, responsibility, accountability, and even authority are called into question and justifiably placed under immense and intense scrutiny. They are even questioned and challenged. During such times, we must not punt the discussion and decision making, but lead it and lean strongly into it. Today, we have an opportunity to provide direction, correction, and reconciliation to an untenable situation that continues to vex our entire school district, and more importantly, what I described in my dissertation on instructional leadership over 20 years ago as the fulcrum, the core technology of a school or district, that thing that some board members call the main thing, the process of teaching and learning. We have heard from over 350 speakers. They now want to hear from us. This item initially sought to direct the superintendent to provide an update to the school board on issues, incidents, and/or resolutions pertaining to the 2021 opening of schools at the Academics, Innovation, Evaluation, and Technology Committee in October, and include a review and a discussion of the paradigm, process, and policy utilized to select and contract with K12 as the sole provider of online learning curriculum and/or platform services to MDCPS. The training and professional development provided to district and school leaders, teachers, employees, and parents in preparation for the school year, procedures and protocols, as well as personnel responsible for the mitigation and avoidance of cyber attacks on the district's technology and internet infrastructure. Available approved options for distance learning that may be used other than which is currently provided in related contractual terms of the existing provider, and plans moving forward to ensure a safe, seamless, and smart reopening for both distance and schoolhouse learning models. However, at this time, Madam Chair and members of the board, there are issues and concerns that continue to vex and reverberate across our district and exacerbate that fulcrum, that core technology of teaching and learning, in which there is a wide consensus is inextricably linked to K-12. We've heard from nearly 350 parents, teachers, and community members. Notwithstanding the manner in which the procurement of said K-12 has made its way into the district, as well as the letter received last evening from K-12 CEO offering, and I quote, regrets, close quote, yet conceding to knowing that the quote, 6-week time frame was a challenge, close quote, and that they have, quote, not been able to get to where Miami-Dade administration wants them to be, close quote. I am not clear on where the administration, quote, wants them to be, but I am and believe that this board after today is very clear where the teachers, school leaders, employees, parents, and most importantly, needed them to be when they made a $15.3 million business decision to accept the challenge. We must now make a business decision on behalf of our stakeholders and children. And because our business is not for profit, but is the education of our children, I am now proposing to amend my item to place after letter C, quote, termination of any and all contractual considerations of K-12 as the learning management system for the remainder of the 2021 school year, and which is a part of the district's online distance learning system, which will include but not be limited to ceasing any execution of pending contractual agreement with K-12 regarding the same, transitioning related information and data, and negotiating in consultation with the Board Attorney's Office any outstanding fees due to K-12 for services rendered through September 11, 2020, notwithstanding extended timelines exclusive of additional fees associated with said termination. The total amount of fees rendered regarding same shall be provided to board prior to the execution of resolution and fee distribution. And on letter D, which will become E, related submission of notifications to the Florida Department of Education where required, striking out terms of existing provider. Madam Chair, members of the board, that is my motion to amend this item, and I look forward to your support in a second so that we can dispose of this issue, move forward with the termination of this particular conundrum, and start to heal and move this process forward on behalf of our children. That's my
Second.
motion, Madam Chair.
Second that, Madam Chair, I
Chair, I'd
second
like to
it.
Second that.
I like to second it too.
Thank you.
It's been moved and second,
Yes.
the amendment. All those in favor?
Madam Chair, is there a discussion on the amendment, please?
You may, yes.
Yes,
Point
since
of
the.
point of order,
since
Madam,
the-
point of order, Madam Chair. I think we have to vote on the amendment first. It's been moved and seconded. You can have the discussion after the vote, Dr.
Thank
Perez.
you, yes.
I would like, don't you have a discussion before you take the vote?
But this is,
So that the board member would know whether or not they're in favor of it?
Mr. Harvey? I believe this is a vote is on the amendment. Mr. Harvey?
Yes, ma'am. The motion is to amend the item. It's on the floor.
Exactly, so I could speak.
Move and second, I believe there's no discussion then, as I believe, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion passes with Dr. Galvin.
Madam Chair, may I speak?
Yes, now you may. We're going to be voting on the item as amended. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. First of all, on the amendment, which is just very, very similar to my item, it is customary that when two items are similar, they are considered together. And all the more reason, I think, right now to consider them together since we are, it is late at night. So if we are going to be discussing the termination of this contract, which is what I am proposing in item H16 and proposed, and this is very unusual that a board member, usually if they're similar, they're discussed together, not that you add something that is what another board member has on their agenda item. I
Point
would
of order, Madam
ask,
Chair.
I would
Point of order.
ask, Madam Chair,
of
I would
order.
ask
Point
that,
of
I
order,
would
Madam Chair.
ask, Madam Chair, I have the floor. I would ask that we discuss
calling a-
both items together.
Dr.
Madam
point of
Chair, I
order.
have the floor.
I know, but
Point of order, though, Madam Chair. Point of order.
you know what a point of order is. Yes, Dr. Galvin.
Point of order. What the issues that the board member raised fall outside of the item that's on the table that's being voted upon. She's interjecting a discussion about an item that is not before the board, and she's referring to things that are customary, and I quote, not things that are consistent with proper rules of order. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, well, we need to vote on the item as amendment. All those in favor of the item as amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Madam Chair,
Yes, Dr. Benamar.
I'd like to add my name as a co-sponsor to the item now that this amendment has taken place, which is what I am requesting, the termination of this contract with K12. So I'd like to add myself now that the item has been amended with that inclusion, and I thank the maker of Dr. Galvin who proffered the item. I want to add myself now as a co-sponsor.
Madam Chair?
Ma'am, Ms. Navarro, I understand, but I was not asking for that. We were voting. I'm not sure if we finished the vote. It was unanimous, right?
No, I don't know.
Madam
Well,
Chair,
that's why
for the sake of solidarity and co-sponsorship, Madam Chair, I'll, whatever procedure the attorney can advise us that we can call for co-sponsorships because some of the.
Yes, and we will, but I wanted to make sure that we were voting on and if it passed or not. That's what I was trying to do before we
Yes,
were
ma'am.
interrupted. I believe that all those in favor of the item had signified by saying aye. Dr. Feldman said no, right?
No, I had a question.
Well, but
Madam Chair?
yes, ma'am, Dr. Bendos Menigal, yes.
Okay, I'll wait until you get through with your procedure. I'll wait.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes. So we voted already on the item. Anyone to say no? Dr. Karp, you voted no?
Ma'am,
I can't hear you, sir.
yes, ma'am, I'm in favor, but I just needed to understand one thing. If we vote to terminate here, I just wanted to know what would be replacing this program.
Madam Chair, I can respond to that if I may.
Yes, please. Yes, Dr. Gallen.
I just want to clarify him. I want to clarify him for the record. The motion is not to terminate because there is no agreement. The motion is to cease and direct that there is to be no contractual agreement reached, just for the record, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I think.
Madam Chair?
Dr.
I'm sorry,
Feldman.
when you're done, no, when you're
I
done,
didn't-
Madam Chair.
I didn't, I was just trying to follow up, Madam Chair. So if it's not a termination and it's just to cease using this platform, or cease going forward with the agreement, does that mean that the school district could continue to use K12 without an agreement for those who wanted to use it? Or is there going to be a replacement? I just need to understand. So let's say we don't have an agreement or we don't move forward with it. Does that mean that some teachers can use K12? Or does that mean that the school district will use other platforms?
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Yes, please.
Yes, Dr. Carp, great question. In the original E, available approved options for distance learning that will be used other than which is currently provided in related submissions. So the administration has the latitude to utilize the other platforms that have been cited. I wasn't going to be prescriptive. We have platforms that exist, but other than K12 is the one that we're citing here.
Mhm. Dr. Carp, may I ask Dr. Feldman, are you finished, Dr. Carp?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. My whole thing is that teachers have choices to be able to use what platforms they believe would best help them help their children, help their students. For me, we're a school district of choice. And if we can provide choice here for our teachers, they know their students best, and it might be different platforms for different teachers. And that's what my hope is when we get past this. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Feldman, sir?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you, Dr. Gallen, for moving this forward. My question, Madam Chair, is we're about to vote, or we did, I'm not sure, on the item as amended, correct?
Yes.
Does that mean we no longer can speak to the item? It's already over with and done, or are we still allowed to speak to the item as such if one wanted to?
Well, you could speak, but the vote has been taken, and then we were the co-sponsorship. So, Dr. Feldman, you could have asked before the vote was taken, and I would have been happy.
Well, I'm not complaining. I mean, I did, when you said, is that a no? And I said, I have a question. I thought that did it. But Madam Chair, through the chair,
Yes.
can I just ask for clarification on something? My belief is that the superintendent has already shared with the system that if you're in grades 6 through 12, you don't have to use the K12 and you can use the Zoom, the Microsoft Team, etc. I believe I saw in a memorandum also that if you're in K-5 and you're having difficulty with the K-12 Pro platform, you as a teacher could use your judgment to try a different platform. I am in favor of that, and I just wanted to make sure that was what the maker was saying teachers could still do until that report comes to us on the 14th, was it, Dr. Gallen? Yes, October 14th. So would that be consistent with what we're saying about this item once it passes? That teachers have the ability to use other platforms as was indicated on the 6-12 model, as well as other platforms rather than K-12 on the elementary level, if that met their needs as the teacher. I think that's the same thing you're saying, right?
Dr. Gallen?
Yes, that's the language through the chair. That's the language, Dr. Feldman, other platforms other than.
Okay,
Other
great.
than. Yes,
Thank
but that amendment, this K-12 is being terminated.
Thank you.
Got
very
it.
much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Feldman. I apologize if you
Chair.
wanted to speak before.
Not a problem.
Yes, Dr. Perez, you raised your hand?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Two things. First of all, before the vote, I think it's only
Noted.
appropriate that we ask the I would like to hear from the superintendent regarding this decision. As you know, and again, as I said, I want to move this meeting along, and I think it should, that my item, page 16, should be considered along with it. However, more importantly, right now, I would like to hear from the superintendent.
Dr. Bendas-Mendengo, you wanted to speak, I believe, ma'am? Are you there, Dr. Bendas-Mendengo? I believe you raised your hand.
Madam Chair, did you hear me? I said I would like to hear from the
Yes,
superintendent.
but I need to speak to board members first before the superintendent. I need to, it's a vote that took place, and I wanted the board members, all of them that need to speak before we ask the superintendent.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I did want you to say a thank you to the maker of the item, Dr. Steve Gallo III, and of course, all that he put into this allowed many of us not to ask so many questions. It was so well done. So thank you, Dr. Gallen, for your expertise in writing these wonderful items that will give us an opportunity to share our thoughts and our vision with our community, our teachers, our entire staff, and of course, for our children. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the moment. And of course, we must obey when the chair is asking questions. So that's why I gave deference to you before. And once I started speaking, I did not want to be interrupted, and I do appreciate that. Thank you again, Dr. Gallen. Thank you for your expertise.
Thank you, Dr. Bendas-Mendengo. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you. Ms. Rojas?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And first and foremost, I too would like to take this opportunity to thank Vice Chair Gallen for doing such a wonderful job. It was a very succinct and very comprehensive board item, so I appreciate that. And I had many, many questions. I still have some, but I do want to state that starting the first day of school, I visited numerous schools almost every day. And I want all of the stakeholders that are listening to us this evening to know that we heard you. I personally witnessed what our teachers were going through. I witnessed those amazing educators who do God's work on earth cry in front of me and express their sincere frustration over what was going on with the K12 program in our schools. I witnessed those principals and assistant principals who wanted to help and wanted to do whatever they could to assist their teachers, but also felt just as frustrated. I heard from those parents who many of them were having challenges of their own, many not even savvy in technology, but doing their very best to help the children. Although they should not have to sit there the entire time with their children, you heard from so many of them today, and I'm not going to be redundant. You all heard every single statement that was made here today. But I have personally spoken to parents who also had tears in their eyes because they did not know what else to do when they saw their children frustrated, crying, extremely unhappy, with anxiety because they wanted to do well, but they couldn't because of all the issues that we have already discussed. So I want our stakeholders to know that we hear you. I know for sure that my colleagues hear you the same way that I heard you and I personally witnessed. And because of that situation that I witnessed, which I felt, by the way, which was inexcusable, unacceptable, and it was a failure. And it should have never happened, but it did. And here we are today. I had numerous questions that I wanted to address during this time, but due to the lack of time, I'm going to try to very, very briefly just address a couple of things that I was very concerned about in reference particularly to the contract. Who was directly responsible and the lead person from the superintendent's cabinet to negotiate this contract with K12 through the chair? Is there someone that can respond, Mr. Superintendent? Someone?
Yes, through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I believe that the lead person who negotiated the lion's share of the contract was actually probably two people, Ms. Sylvia Diaz and Lisette Alves, under the leadership, obviously, of our CAO, Ms. Maria Izquierdo.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And through the chair, who were other staff members that were involved in the negotiation process? Was Mr. Steiger involved through the chair?
I don't think, through the chair, I don't think Mr. Steiger was directly involved in negotiation other than the financial aspect and how it could be funded. Nothing to do with content elements or, but his office, obviously, because he is responsible for procurement. So procurement officer, Mr. DeBarros, was involved as well.
Okay. Thank you. Very quickly, in the K12 contract submitted to the board, who from the superintendent's cabinet was supposed to have signed the contract and review it before it was sent to you, Mr. Superintendent, for your signature through the chair?
Through the chair, there's a process for review of contracts, which is slightly different now because of the pandemic. But after it is reviewed by legal, and by the way, the legal department was involved in many of these conversations. Once it comes to my office, usually Mr. Torrance or Ms. Tabitha Fazzino review the contract and initial the contract for my approval, which, as I said, during the shutdown, it is done electronically. And as I've stated before, when I first received it, cannot tell exactly the date, but sometime around the 24th, it seemed okay. Process it with electronic signature. But as I've stated before, time and time again, it was apparent that there were significant delays as acknowledged by the CEO of K12. My level of concern grew significantly, and I felt that it would be in the best interest of the school system to not fully execute the contract. So the direction was to not forward any document with an electronic signature, that no document would be leaving this district unless it reflected my original signature. And we stopped the contract from ever being fully executed or going to K12.
Thank you. On page 2, through the chair of 12, number 5, it talked about the billing terms, and it stated that K12 Miami-Dade Enterprise licenses billing, customer will provide K12 with a purchase order within 30 days after the completion of a fully executed contract. K12 shall invoice customer for year 1 promptly following the receipt of PO with payment due within 30 days of customer's receipt of invoice. Can you please explain this portion for me, please, through the chair?
Through the chair, I'll do my best. If all the deliverables as listed in the scope of work were accomplished, and I believe that there was a specific date of September 7th, if I recall correctly, meaning the platform is fully functioning. All the courses are loaded, not only for the first period of the school year, but for the long term. It has been continuously used successfully. Then after that, then an invoice would be submitted to the school system for payment, because we have what we contracted K12 for. K12 was not contracted to manage schools, to operate schools. K12 was contracted for the platform and the content, the curriculum. That's it. And that would be a finite deliverable. Obviously, we were never invoiced, nor has any payment been made, any PO created, approved to pay for anything.
Okay, so basically then, because my question really was, does it mean that once the contract is signed and a PO is submitted, or did it mean that the PO would be sent at the end of the contract after completion or fully executed contract? So
I would ask, through the chair, I would ask Mr. Torrance to assist me on this, but I believe, I don't have the contract in front of me, but I believe that the provisions in a contract would provide that once all of the elements are delivered, then the district would be invoiced, and then a payment would be processed via a purchase order. But we were never invoiced because the contract was never fully executed and returned to the third-party entity.
okay, so thank you, and through the chair, and I'm gonna try to be very brief here. So basically then they get paid at the beginning of the contract or at the end, because as I'm looking at this, I was wondering, is there any consideration for payments to be made quarterly, semi-annually, or at the completion of the project?
So through the chair, and again, staff can chime in, but the deliverables were the platform and the curriculum. Once we owned that, the job by K12 was basically done. The contract, the original contract, provided for the payment once the deliverables were provided in accordance with the timeline for a fully functioning platform, content and curriculum utilization. Obviously, that did not become the reality, unfortunately, regrettably. And that is the reason, based on my personal assessment, and not just mine. There was staff, even in OAT, that continued to, after a number of changes, opine that it was not in our best interest to process the contract as it had been initially reviewed by staff and signed off by K12. And one of the elements that obviously would be looked at and would be considered to change would be the payment process. But we felt that we never really needed to get to that point because we were not comfortable. I was not comfortable. A number of team members were not comfortable with proceeding under the conditions that we were facing, which were, unfortunately, as acknowledged by K12, a significant number of delays, a fine vision and plan whose execution by the entity was not accomplished. And that for me was distressing, disturbing, and put us in a position of protecting the interests of the district and the board and not accrue a liability by fully executing the contract. But I can tell you that if we had further amended the contract, as we could have possibly have done if the results of the implementation had improved with time since the first day of school, but they did not, the contract would have been substantially different. And one of the provisions would have been a guarantee over time for the delivery of this platform regarding its stability. But we never got to that point because, as I said, I felt that we had seen enough to stop the contract from being fully executed and returned to K12. And as I said, I wanted to ensure that beyond the typical and ordinary initials of a contract that is ready for me to sign and the original sort of electronic stamp that quickly was reversed. And I made the personal decision that this contract could not be executed without my original signature on the basis of my growing concern over delays and, quite frankly, plan changes and surprises. So, as I've stated a number of times, I felt it was in the best interest of our school system for me not to allow this contract to be fully executed.
Thank you. For the record, I just want to state that I still have many major issues dealing with the billing and the termination clause of this particular contract. And because of the timeline, I just want to very quickly state two things. First and foremost, I want to put on the record that there's been a minority of speakers who have somehow been misinformed that the school board members were involved as responsible for the relationships of the district with the K through 12 and my school online platform. The school board members are not responsible and were not involved in the selection, development of the district's K12 My Online platform and curriculum. The selection of K12 was under the purview of the superintendent and his staff. As such, the board was not involved in the evaluation, vetting, selection, negotiation, or procurement of the K12 curriculum. Although the school board did not evaluate or select K through 12 curriculum, the board is fulfilling its statutory duties through this public meeting and has taken necessary steps through the presentation of several board items, some that you've heard, one that you've heard, others that you haven't heard yet, to implement corrective measures to resolve the problems that arose with the K through 12 platform. And I also want to state for the record, I'm very happy, Dr. Gallen, that you made the amendment because the board indeed can direct the superintendent to terminate a contract, even though we were not involved in the initial process. So I just wanted to make sure that that was very clearly articulated because I believe that it's been misunderstood by some and it needed full clarity. Additionally, I just want to end that I did put many questions that I had because we never seem to have enough time at our meetings, numerous questions. I did submit to the superintendent as soon as we first found out about this new endeavor, and this was submitted back to me on September 1st, 2020 with responses, and I will be following up with some other questions, but I did address this in August and I did get the response in September. And I just want to say thank you once more to all those teachers who were helping each other out through this very difficult process. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I saw you in action. And again, we will forever be grateful for what you've done. And you found the solutions from day one, because I witnessed teachers on day one, either going through the back door and using Clever, or those teachers were on Microsoft Teams and Zoom. So you did what you always do. You found solutions to any problems that come your way because your passion and your compassion, your dedication to our students is second to none. And that goes again for the principals, the assistant principals, and parents. You have been phenomenal. We know what you've gone through. It's been very frustrating. And as I said, we hear you. And we hope that we are able to now, prior to the end of this evening, let you all know through the different items that you're going to hear that this board is indeed responding to all of the issues that we have been confronted with. But most importantly, the children, the reason why we are all here. They deserve to have nothing less than programs at 100% capacity from day one get-go. Our children are future leaders of tomorrow, and that is what they deserve, and that is what they will get. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and those are all the questions that I have for right now.
So sorry. Yeah. Dr. Feldman, sir?
Madam Chair, and I appreciate the being called on again. That would be my second time. May I waive this moment and allow those board members that have not spoken and come back to me after?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Garcia? Ms. Garcia?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, Dr. Feldman. I appreciate that. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Gallen for this item. It was, as always, Dr. Gallen, you're extremely well written, very much on point, and your amendments were exactly what we needed to do at this time of the night. And through all of the difficulties that we have gone through, it really does allow the board to take swift action to eliminate the K12 platform from the Miami-Dade County Public Schools distance learning. And I think that's what we know that's what everybody wanted to see after hearing hours and hours and hours of concerns and ideas and suggestions from our parents and our teachers. One of the main things that stuck out to me is that the comment of our students and teachers deserve better. And I think that really summed it all up. I'm not going to go on and on to speak because our speakers have really, in my mind, our speakers have really said everything and have really encompassed the whole difficulties and the issues that we've dealt with in the past week and a half. And I'm glad that this board has found a way of resolving this and moving forward so that our teachers and our students do get what they deserve, and that is better. With that, I also want to co-sponsor the item, so I hope that we can vote on this quickly so we can finally put a close to this issue. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I believe Dr. Karp, you spoke already. Dr. Feldman gave his time because he had spoken before, but I'm going to call the other board member second time if you wish. Dr. Karp, I believe you have to speak again. Dr.
Yes, before I had asked a question about termination and ceasing and the language. I do have that I can wait if you're going through to give each board member an opportunity to speak for the first time. I'll be happy to wait as long as I could give some remarks.
That's all right. I think everyone except me have spoken before, the ones that are here.
Okay, so I'll be quick, Madam Chair. So there's a couple of things. One, some of the speakers mentioned the use of textbooks. There were a number of parents that even wrote in about being able to drive to the school and be able to pick up textbooks and to use that. Teachers mentioned in digital books, regular textbooks with platforms such as Teams and Zoom. So I just wanted to mention that because that was brought out by a number of speakers and in emails. But the question I have is, Dr. Gallen's item also touches on the openings, and a number of speakers, some spoke in favor of opening schools and others spoke in opposition to that. So my question is, I guess for staff, Madam Chair, is a survey we know was given out to parents that asked if they planned on sending their kids back to brick and mortar sites for the August opening. These surveys were filled out a while ago, and of course, we need updated responses if we're going to have an October opening, so we're prepared on day one. So I would ask, because personally I believe that we're, as I've said, a choice district, so there should be a choice to go back to school as soon as possible or to stay at home. So the question I have is for staff, if there can be a comment on what we've done to elicit updated information from parents on whether they would like their children to return to a school site or to remain in an online platform. Thank you, Madam Chair, if I can get a response from staff.
Sure, but I also believe that you may know that there was another survey sent to parents, I believe yesterday, right, Tuesday? That's why I just wanted, I don't know if you saw it. I did see it from a parent, but anyway, staff can respond.
Through the chair, Dr. Karp, we continue to assess, and obviously principals have done very good work in managing these difficult times. We have contemplated an additional survey. The survey that was used with parents yesterday was really to better understand, not just yesterday, actually preceded yesterday, better understand their experience so that we would be better prepared to make the decisions we felt we needed to make. But I do believe, in answering your question, that we may be best served by engaging the parents once again, even though we have a pretty good idea based on the preliminary surveys that were done, what parents' wishes are. And we still hear, you know, concern, consternation on either side. But much like you and I believe the board, we are a choice district. We are encouraged by the trend data that we continue to observe in our community. And we expect that our criteria that was established by experts, the gating criteria, will be met in time for an end of month, certainly October, but later on this month, the criteria, I believe, will be met in a satisfactory way. But the criteria needs to be met as approved by the board in the reopening plan for us to move forward. But it would not be a bad idea to once again determine a final decision by the parents regarding the return to school. And Ms. Rose did ask me a question earlier that I don't think I fully answered, and I would like the board to be at ease about a couple of things. I understand the amendments that were made. We have moved in the direction of, quite frankly, eliminating the liabilities. That's why the signature, full execution of that contract was not achieved or accomplished. And I can tell this board that there are no outstanding liabilities, meaning there are no payouts to K12. Those conversations were had between staff and K12, between me and the CEO directly, because obviously confidence didn't grow in that entity's ability to deliver a fully functional product within the timelines that had been established. So I want the community to know and understand, just like I was ultimately, and I am ultimately, the person responsible for negotiating the contract, because I signed it and I didn't make decisions, obviously, regarding the content development or certain elements, but ultimately the conversation that landed the deal, comes to me and through me, because I needed to get a best price, and the last quote that we had obtained was not satisfactory. So I am ultimately responsible. People collaborated at many levels on different elements of curriculum, of deliverables, of key elements of this platform. But I want to make sure that the community understands that ultimately, this was something that we believe was in the best interest of our students and teachers based on feedback that we got from last year. And obviously, we were not able to get there for all the reasons there are known. But this was a collective negotiation over many different intricacies and elements. But I want the board to know that the last conversation, if that's what Ms. Rojas was asking, reaching that $15.3 million price point, which is significantly lower than what we were initially quoted, that I am absolutely responsible for. And that's why I stopped the execution of contract. And that's why I stopped also ensuring that as a result of a failure on this entity's ability to deliver a working platform, that there would be no liability to the school system whatsoever. And that's after we have already received the recognition payment that we promised the teachers. It is deposited in the foundation's account with no strings attached or liabilities. So I think that was important, since that was one of the elements that Dr. Gallen amended in the item. There are no payments whatsoever, none up until now, and there will be no payments to K12 based on the conversations that I had with its CEO right up front and at the end. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Paris, you raise your hand?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, and there are certain things that I'd like to say. And again, you know, I did ask that the superintendent be allowed to speak when I spoke, but then he was allowed to speak subsequent when other board members requested it. But I want to say that I am the only board member that voted to, at the committee meeting, to have Mr. Nat Davis, who is the CEO of K12, to speak to us. And it was very unfortunate that the board decided not to hear him, because there was no reason, particularly since I heard a board member read a letter of his opinion. It would have been just the same to have heard him personally than to quote a letter. But I did meet with him because it was perfectly okay to do. And our attorney can attest to that. As a matter of fact, I had a representation from the attorney's office during that meeting. And I want to say, he is a very nice, he seems to be a very nice person who spoke very calmly and very positively of our staff. More than 3 times, Mr. Davis said, "We have failed you. We have failed Superintendent Carvalho." And I have witnesses, my staff was also there. This is unfortunate. We tried to compress what should take 3 months maybe or more into a 6-week period. It was more complex than what we thought. We failed him, they said, meaning we failed. And I think part of the problem that happened was that, if you recall, during the summer, Miami-Dade, we were at the end of the spring. We were not sure exactly where we would be as far as being able to opening the schools and when. And when Miami became a hot spot, it became evident that we would have to not open our brick and mortar schools on the day that we were hoping. And we kept hoping, and everyone was so hopeful that we would be able to do that. And it is so unfortunate, all of the heartache that our community has felt at every level. And it is so unfortunate because everyone had the very best of intentions. I don't think anyone involved in this process had anything but the best intention for our community, for our students. But as Mr. Davis said repeatedly to me, the enemy was time. The enemy was time, and maybe it is a good platform, but the enemy has been and continues to be time. That's why I believe that we should terminate the contract, but not because I feel that there was anyone who acted in anything but in the best of intentions. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would still like to hear from the superintendent.
Thank you. Well, we heard from the superintendent, but let me ask another board member that wanted to speak again.
Madam Chair, one final little thing I have to say. In today's Miami Herald, if you read it, you see that we are not the only school district, and K12 is not the only platform. Of the 100 largest school districts, 70% of them are having the same kinds of issues that we are having. It's just unfortunate for our community and for so many other communities. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Dr. Foreman, you want to speak now, sir?
That'd be fine. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I do appreciate, one, how you have handled tonight, and two, how fair you are to all of us. Thank you for that opportunity. I know I spoke earlier. I just have a couple of things that I really need to get off and make sure that they're said, not so much for me or for anyone else, but for people who are listening. There's been a lot of angst. There's been a lot of anger. There's been a lot of words that have been used that hurt a lot of people, and I understand why, because the people themselves were hurt and they were upset and they were disappointed. But now that this has passed us today and tonight, and we're headed toward a different course, and that course is that we have the ability to rebound with what we know is solid teaching and learning. We have the ability to utilize all of the tools in our tool chest and our tool belt. And we have the ability to do the same thing we've been doing for the past 10 years, because the same people are in the same seats. And they are there and have made the changes earlier as we move through different problems. So the superintendent and his cabinet and senior staff, they went into this, I have to believe they went into this venture thinking this was the best thing that they could do for us. They went through it in this adventure, and they were not saying, gosh, how can I get people upset? And now that the board has taken the action that we have, I think that those same people are now going to be the ones who provide the resources, provide the references, the foundation that we've heard about tonight from so many individuals about the Zoom and the Microsoft, yes, all those different programs and platforms, and put them together in a way that will allow our students to not just do well, but to catch up and go beyond. That's one of the things I wanted to say. The second one, Madam Chair, through your authority, is this. I was keeping tabs, and there were 111 references tonight out of those 400 some odd people that talked about not opening. And I think that is critical, and I don't want it to get lost in all the other work that we're doing. There is a fear among the people that we will only use one or two of those 5 to 8 metrics that were developed through the superintendent's task force. There is a fear that that positivity rate would be used and the number of ICU beds that are being taken by COVID-19 patients. Well, we all know from everything we've read that the positivity rate can be manipulated, and as if it looked by itself, if you want to bring the rate down, you stop testing people who are elderly and you test young folk. If you want to put the rate up, then you do the same but in the opposite direction. And we know that if you want a lower percentage of use in the ICU beds for COVID patients, then move some of your beds from the ICU regular and move them into the COVID section. I bring that up because the essence of being safer, I don't know that we can ever be safe, but the minimizing of risk is really going to depend on those other trend data points, those other 4 or 5 points that the superintendent has alluded to, that the medical and scientific field from the task force have come together on. And I would hope, and this gets me into my last piece, I would hope and I would ask that the maker of this item, Dr. Gallen, if he would be kind enough, because I think it's so very important, because there's a lot of words on this. If he would go just through those number 1, A through E, and bring out the highlight of what he and all of us are now expecting to happen between now and October 14th. What exactly are we looking for? And if he was to add the one other piece that just said, parenthetically, Mr. Superintendent, also on the 14th, if you would bring those 5 to 8 points that you're going to be using to make this decision, then at least our community can feel at rest that it's not just 2, and would maybe feel better that this is not a political situation, but one of health and science. So through you, Madam Chair, if I could ask Dr. Gallen if he would summarize those A through E in a very simple, poignant, and important essence of those items so that everyone who's listening can now say, yes, I understand what we're getting. Yes, I understand what we're getting, because they are important. So if you would, Dr. Gallen, through the chair.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Dr. Feldman. Through the chair, very, very quickly, I'll just encapsulate the essence of the recommend, which you indicated, Dr. Feldman, provide an update to the school board on issues, incidents, and/or resolutions pertaining to the 2021 opening of schools. This update is to be provided at the Academics, Innovation, Evaluation, and Technology Committee of October 14th and 17th. I thought that the presentation at the committee will be prudent because obviously there are a lot of questions, and I think as things continue to settle, we'll have an opportunity to ask questions and take a deeper dive to get some clarity around some of the issues that happen. The first thing is the question around how do we get to select and contract with K12 as the sole provider of online learning curriculum. There were questions about that. That clarification can be provided. When I say what was the paradigm, process, and policy, the paradigm, obviously, what was the thought behind it? What was the process? Was there a process for vetting? Was it not? I think Ms. Rojas asked whose decision was it? All of those things can really be fleshed out at that particular time with A. And lastly, what was the policy provision utilized? What policy that ended up with the item not being brought to the board? What was the process utilized in the policy? Number two, information regarding professional development and training provided to district and school leaders, teachers, employees, and parents. There were some issues relative to professional development and training. The board had affirmed several items. The superintendent committed to that training with the 1 week delay of opening. It was highly publicized that training would take place during that particular week. But that's when the issues started to manifest themselves. It started to actually manifest themselves in training. So the first encounter with K12 from our employees and our teachers and our parents was during the training phase. So we want to unpack that, Dr. Feldman. C, procedures and protocols, as well as personnel responsible for the mitigation and avoidance of cyber attacks on the district's technology and internet infrastructure. We want to understand what's in place. We've had several items. Ms. Rojas, for example, had an item the board approved to address this issue. Other items have been addressed previously regarding cyber attacks and technology. I did an item on technology. So we want to look at the procedures and protocols. What is in place? Today, we heard the superintendent making a commitment to reallocate $5 million for that. We heard that today, but we have had a conversation around these issues for 2 years. So we want to unpack that. And the personnel, what is the organizational structure around that system? Is it in-house? Is it out-house? Is it a combination? D, we capture that. Termination of any and all contractual considerations of K12 as the learning management system for the remainder of the 2021 school year, and in which is a part of the district's online distant learning system. That's pretty clear and cut and dry. And ceasing any execution of pending contractual agreement. The superintendent has already addressed that, but we can bring closure to that. I know he did indicate that there was a conversation relative to the culmination of this relationship without any outstanding liabilities. But I asked the question and it kind of made some headlines. Was it a pat on the back, handshake, or a wink? I think we need to obviously bring some closure to that. Although we have the letter from the CEO, we don't have any letter to close out our relationship so that in a subsequent time, that conversation can be lost in translation. So that's why I asked for the board attorney's office to be involved in it. There were questions about the board attorney's involvement or lack thereof of involvement. You know, were they negotiating or were they reviewing a document? There's a difference. There's a difference. There's a big difference, and I want to just put that on the table. So they look at a lot of contracts throughout, whether it's a contract from a school, from a district office, but are they sitting there negotiating the elements of a contractual agreement for a curriculum program? That's a distinction that has to be made. But in this particular case, if there is any outstanding liabilities that can be litigated, we wanted them at the table to resolve that. So I trust the superintendent's conversation with the CEO and I'm sure that he's going to, in his some shape, form, or fashion, affirm closure of that particular matter relative to services rendered. And I would like that closure in writing personally. So that's what I would be expecting as a part of this particular issue. And if there were any fees, because we know services were rendered, but if we're going to have those accepted as in kind does require documentation as well. We know in kind comes with some documentation. So if he's able to have negotiated any no more liabilities, that's great. Let's close that out and make sure that that's addressed. Available approved options for distance learning. That was an issue Dr. Carp asked. And the key word is that may be used other than which is currently provided, related, submission of amendments, etc. So the superintendent and his staff had already taken some measures relative to the available options that are approved. They started that particular process, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Superintendent, at 6 through 12. I think that was very, very clear that 6 through 12 options for online distance learning have been established at grades 6 through 12. And there was still some deliberations over K through 5. So those items, those platforms that are approved, those will be delineated by the administration, but we want clarity around that with what the teachers are comfortable with, what provides continuity, and what is the great degree of familiarity. Obviously, Zoom and Microsoft Teams has been the one that's been pretty much consistent. I'm appreciative that the district has now taken a position that even the Zoom must go through the portal to provide some additional safeguards and security provisions for our students. So they're pretty much consistent with what this item is speaking to. But it's clearly the exclusion and the ceasing of K12. K12 is not a part of that equation, period, point blank. The submission of any amendments and notifications to the FDOE. Having been an administrator or superintendent, I know we can make decisions at the local level, but because this was part of a reopening plan, there may or may not be notifications that may be required to the FDOE. If there is, authorize, direct them to make those notifications as required, if they are, where required. And I scratched out contractual terms of existing provider, which would have been K12. Again, this was a part of a reopening plan that had to be submitted. If there's going to be a deviation, if K12 was cited, we're no longer using it, maybe that may be a notification that we don't want on the back end someone to say we didn't notify them of a change, a material change to our system here in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. And last but not least, Dr. Feldman, plans moving forward to ensure a safe, seamless, and smart reopening for both distant and schoolhouse learning models. I know some of the conversation got integrated, but I think that's something that we would expect to have. What are the plans moving forward for a distant and a schoolhouse learning model? We had 3 initial models, the hybrid, the schoolhouse, and the virtual, but the most recent reopening plan only had the distance learning. But as things start to change with conditions, we can anticipate that. But to your point, we don't want to hear it on the street. We don't want to hear it on Twitter. We don't want to hear it in chat rooms. We want to hear it from the superintendent. What are the plans moving forward with respect to a schoolhouse model? And clearly that is something that the parents and the stakeholders and the employees want to hear. So that's it. And as you would say, Dr. Feldman, in a nice bow. And those are the deliverables that will be expected pursuant to the item that was unanimously approved by the board moments ago. Thank you, Dr. Feldman, and thank you, Madam Chair.